If you're frustrated with your team, most likely they're frustrated with your direction. Hi, welcome to Unearth with Shelly Hughes. I'm Shelly Hughes, and in this episode and in this podcast, we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of building a profitable, passionate brand. We talk about the wins, the losses, and of course, celebrations of building a brand that you're just really proud of and one you've always dreamt of. And I'm talking to the leaders in this episode. Also talking to maybe associate people on the team as well to maybe give you a little bit of confidence to talk to your leader. But I really want this to be a leadership wake-up call. Your team cannot read your mind. And most leadership frustrations aren't performance issues. They're really based on clarity issues. It's how clear is your team about the why behind what you're trying to do and really what you're trying to do, period. Your team can't read your mind. And if you're not setting them up with context, you're really kind of setting them up for failure. Here's the thing, communication, I think, is the hardest part in leadership, and giving direction and telling how things should be done is not micromanaging. Micromanaging is diving into every little tiny part of a project. So I guess we can separate that a little bit, right? How can you really show what you want the final product to be and kind of giving your input in the beginning and giving a lot of clarity and honestly just like letting your team, whom you hired to do the work better than you ever could, giving them the autonomy to really execute. And I kind of go off of the 10-80-10 rule. So when we have a project going on, whether it's a proposal or a client project or whatever it is, I really come in the first 10%. And I say, okay, here is the direction I'm thinking. Here's what we have to include. I like to say if there's just the first 10%, really giving clear direction on what the definition of done is and what are the expectations for this project. Then the 80%, I let them execute. And this takes practice, right? But if you do that first 10% really, really well, the 80 should just be incredibly clear on what they need to do. Then it's the last 10% is when I kind of come in, I polish, kind of put my little like cherry on top, whatever that looks like. A lot of times that's not even needed. And the thing that I think is really hard as a founder or as a leader is, you might come in and you might not even know what you want until you see what you don't want. It's really taking that, and that's not cool, right? It's not cool to say, hey, so-and-so, I want you to do this project. I don't know what I don't want, but I don't really know what I want. So I'm probably going to change everything once you get 80% done anyway. So if you feel like that's kind of you, snap out of it, figure it out, because it's not good for you. It's not good for your resources, and it's not good for your team because they're always going to feel like you're changing your direction and they don't really have clarity on to do a really good job, and their morale is going to drop. So first 10%, I come in, I give really clear direction. The middle 80%, they execute on it, and then I put the final touches on the last 10%. And here's the thing, it's always giving context to a project, right? I really push this with my team when they're communicating with clients, but I really do this with them as well. It's not enough just to say what you want. Because if people don't understand why they're doing this or why they're putting so much time into something, they're probably not going to do a very good job of it, right? Or they could do a better job if they really understand what the why is. And here's the thing. I know a lot of pragmatic leaders, they will say, that's what their job is. Their job is, their salary is based on getting work done. So they better do the best job that they possibly can. But we're in a space now where people want to feel connected to the projects that they're working on and the companies that they work at and the leaders that they work with. So when I present a project, I always kind of go in this tiered approach. So first is context. Okay, what's the background? How do we get here, right? The second is the why. What is the strategy? Why are we doing this way? Why is this project important, right? And then goes into the what. What are we actually delivering? And I really do feel like most misalignment happens when leaders skip the first two and jump straight to the what. What are we delivering? And it's those first two, the context of like, okay, why are we here? Like, what's the situation? And then the why of like, really, what is the strategy behind what we're trying to do? And if you're able to focus on those first two first, then you don't have to convince anyone that the project that they're working on is important and kind of giving back to the greater idea, right? The greater company. The other thing I want to make sure that I communicate, and what I found, is that Slacks and like one-off text messages, they're not roadmaps. And so if you're trying to, really communicate about a project or whatever it is, you're showing up in your face, and showing your face really matters. Some questions don't warrant meetings. Let's be clear. We want to have less meetings, but they still need answers. So it's this balance of, if you want something done, doing a quick Slack probably isn't the best way to do it, especially if it's a task that takes more than, 3 steps to accomplish. Even if you just show up on a Loom video, be like, hey, I was thinking through this thing. Maybe I want to get your idea, and kind of show up on a video at least. And what honestly we've been doing at the company too is just picking up the phone. I feel like we're so inundated with Zoom that we have to schedule a meeting, and we have to, get on each other's calendars. We have to sit down, and we have to, but what I'm realizing is that people just want to be able to walk around. They want to ask questions. And because we're so hybrid, we miss out on that, like, hey, knocking on someone's door to talk about a challenge, right? So try picking up your phone, try giving them a call, and just talk about, hey, here's some things I was thinking. What do you think? If you don't give the why, or if you don't show your face and you're just kind of barking orders, people are just going to feel like their to-do list is getting longer and longer and longer. And you don't want your team to feel like they have a long to-do list. You want your team to feel like they are contributing on such a massive level to the success of the company and the people that you're serving. The definition of done is also really important. So that's something that, I learned in business, of when you lay out a roadmap, yes, it displays expectations, it displays milestones, but it also talks about what the definition of done is. And if your team is finishing things, but you don't know that they're done, that's kind of an alignment problem. That's an expectations problem. And I was running into this myself, where, I was telling the team, projects that had to happen. They might even be, medium-sized projects, like pretty decently sized projects. And I'd be like, wait a second, what happened to that project? And I have to use my own mental real estate to be like, where did that project go? Where was that, right? And I reached out to the person that was going to do it, and they're like, oh, it was done 2 weeks ago, right? And it was my fault that I didn't really define what the definition of done was. And sometimes the definition of done is a presentation. Maybe it's a quick Slack that says, hey, Shelly, this project's done. I'd love your eyes on it. Here's the link, right? So always, when you're talking about the roadmap, and you're talking about the why, and you're talking about the context and the deliverable, always include what that definition of done is. And even if you're using like a Monday board or an Asana board, have a column that's labeled definition of done. And that task cannot be checked off until that definition of done is completed. And that might be as simple as sending a Slack saying that this project is done. And here's the thing, you have to also understand, are you the bottleneck? Are you the bottleneck in your own business? If you're a smaller business, I can probably guarantee that you're the bottleneck in some areas. Some signs that I look to when trying to define, in some areas of my business, am I being the bottleneck? One is, as leaders, our time is very scarce. And if our time and our lack thereof to check out a project is holding up the overall progress of the project, get this project done, from getting it done or getting to the next step, we are the bottleneck. If you feel like you need to approve every single step, that's called being a micromanager, right? Really think about the 10-80-10 rule again. If you feel like you need to approve everything but never have the time, you're going to be the bottleneck. If you feel like the deliverables are late and your team's morale is low, you're probably the bottleneck, right? This happened to me. I was like, a couple podcast episodes were getting approved the day before they were going out. I'm like, why are we so behind on the podcast episodes? Oh, I realized it was because I pushed our podcast recording by 2 weeks, because meetings just got put on the books and I had to push the episode, right? So I was being the bottleneck of this thing that I really wanted to push, and I'm questioning why things are being done so late. I'm the problem. It's me. So I'm actually very actively trying to figure out how to solve that problem. So, and how I'm trying to fix it, and how I've fixed things like this in the past, because you're always going to be the bottleneck of your business in some capacity, right? But how to fix this? Really front load that strategic direction, like I said, that 10%, and really empower autonomy. Don't, just because someone else deliver something and it would be different than how you would do it, doesn't mean that it's necessarily wrong. So really empower that autonomy of other people and then hire help or get out of the way, right? You hired these people because they're the best at what they do. So let them do what they're best at and just get out of the freaking way. Get out of their way. Disengagement, it's an indicator, right? And by the time you start to notice disengagement in your team, it's already too late. So whatever you have to do to keep that morale up, make sure you do it. Okay, getting back on track. If you feel like you are the bottleneck of your business and you have to realize that, your team cannot read your mind and you have to give immense clarity, what are some things that I like to do to kind of get back on track? One is do anonymous feedback, right? They called it kind of a 360 review, but have it be 360, but just on you. Have your entire team give you anonymous feedback. And very simply, you can just have what should you stop? What should you start? What should you stop? And what should you continue? And that's really great feedback. It's anonymous, but it can be simple, right? So interesting. And here's the thing, you have to accept the feedback because it's true. Someone feels this way and it's not false information, right? So when you get feedback that you might not 100% appreciate or love, take it as truth, and you have to address it. I remember my last company, it was so bad. The leader of the company, I'm just going to say they did this where they wanted feedback on their leadership and it got pushed. I think they started feeling a little bit resentment from the people on the team, and it got pushed and it got pushed and it got pushed. And they said, no, we're going to do this. We want feedback on leadership. And they got their asses absolutely handed to them. It was one particular person on the leadership team. And she came to the team and literally said, I cannot handle this. We're not going to do another one of these again. That did not feel good when, your team is finally able to give feedback and you say that it hurt their feelings and they couldn't do it again. That shows that something's really, really wrong. So take it as truth. Suck it up, buttercup, and you really have to deal with it. You have to sit everyone down and say, hey, this was the feedback specifically, word for word. You can even do word for word. This was the feedback. And here's your plan on making sure that things get better. Or here's your plan on making sure that the things that people really like are continuing to happen. And really sharing that feedback, transparency, and committing to action. And here's the thing, feedback isn't a one-time task. It is a leadership-driven rhythm. You have to be asking feedback consistently, whether it's formal, right? And it's kind of this anonymous survey, or it's informal, right? I might ask my team like, hey, how do you think I did in that meeting, right? And the more you ask for feedback, the more you're going to get it in a timely manner and honestly and respectfully. It's only when you push it off because you're afraid of the feedback that you're going to get is when you're probably going to get really bad feedback and you're never going to want to do it again because most likely the feedback should have been said months and months, if not years ago. And now you have a resentment on your team and now you're going to get your ass handed to you. Your team won't tell you the truth unless you show them what it looks like to hear it. So when you ask for the truth, make sure that you show up and you're ready to take action, no matter what the feedback is. So main takeaway for this one, leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about communicating clearly. It's about asking better questions of your team. And it's about owning your blind spots and giving your team authority to really shine. Your team doesn't need a hero. They just need someone to show up really authentically, and someone to realize that people can't read their minds. And so it's showing up clearly, it's showing up authentically, and your team's going to reward you for it. So thank you. I appreciate your ears or your eyes. If you like this episode, leave a comment. It would be great. Leave a rating. Send this to a friend that you think would like it. And I can't wait to see you next week.